My wife handed me divorce papers at my father's funeral. She slipped them into my hand like they were a program for the service. No tears on her face, no hesitation in her voice. Just a legal envelope while my father's casket sat 20 feet away. My children stood beside her, clinging to her new companion's arm, calling him Dad, as if I'd never existed. I said nothing. Silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. I had been preparing for that moment for months, long before the funeral, long before the papers. My name is Daniel Reed, 45 years old, mechanical engineer in Denver. I've spent 2 decades designing systems to withstand pressure. That's what I do: study stress, anticipate failure, build structures that don't collapse when weight bears down. In my personal life, I use the same skill. While my wife, Claire, thought she was orchestrating her new life with her lover, I was building a trap she didn't even know she was walking into. It began with whispers, missed calls at odd hours, weekends that turned into work trips, and the subtle shift in her eyes when she looked at me. I didn't confront her. Confrontation creates noise, and noise warns your opponent. Instead, I logged everything. Receipts, GPS data from the car she thought I never checked, emails that she forgot to delete from our shared account. When my kids, Emma and Jack, accidentally called another man Dad during a family dinner, she brushed it off, laughing nervously, saying they were confused. I smiled, nodded, and said nothing. But inside, I was locking another piece of evidence into place. By the time my father's health began failing, I had already assembled months of proof. My attorney was on standby. A forensic accountant was reviewing our finances. Claire thought she was leading me blind into betrayal, but I had night vision while she walked in the dark. So when she chose my father's funeral as the stage for her performance, I didn't argue. I didn't tear the papers in half or create a scene in front of family and friends. That's what she expected: rage, humiliation, noise. Instead, I slid the envelope into my jacket, shook the hand of the man standing beside her, and turned back toward the casket. I wasn't going to let her ruin my father's day of rest with her drama. I wasn't going to let her see me break. She thought this was checkmate. What she didn't know was that I'd been playing a different game entirely. Next, I'll tell you how I built the case piece by piece, silently stacking the weight until the moment I dropped it on both of them without raising my voice. After the funeral, people whispered condolences, hands pressed against mine, voices low and reverent. I nodded, thanked them, and kept moving. Not one of them noticed the envelope in my pocket. That was by design. Rage creates scenes. Silence creates questions. Back at the house, Claire played the role of grieving daughter-in-law. She smiled gently, held the kids close, accepted casseroles from neighbors. Her lover stood by, blending in like a shadow in borrowed clothes. People assumed he was just a family friend. They didn't know the truth. Not yet. I didn't speak to her that evening. Instead, I walked into my office, locked the door, and opened the drawer where I kept the real story. Folders stacked neatly, each labeled with dates. Hotel receipts with her name. Credit card statements showing dinners for 2. GPS logs pinpointing addresses across town where she parked for hours. And photographs, not taken by me, but by a private investigator I had hired 6 months earlier when suspicion turned to certainty. Each page was a nail. Each photo was a board. Together, they built the coffin of her deception. I had even prepared financial angles. Claire thought she was clever, quietly moving money into a separate account. What she didn't realize was that the forensic accountant had already traced every transfer. She wasn't hiding wealth, she was leaving a trail. The children complicated everything. Emma was 12, Jack was 9. Too young to fully understand betrayal, but old enough to be manipulated. Claire had introduced her lover slowly, carefully, until the kids saw him as a fixture. She encouraged them to call him Dad. The first time I heard it, I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. But I didn't correct them. Correcting would spark a fight, and fights gave her leverage. So I stayed silent. I let the moment pass. And while they thought I was retreating, I was documenting. Every time the kids slipped, I made a note. Every time Claire positioned her lover in family photos, I saved the file. A custody judge wouldn't see a confused family. He would see parental alienation. That night, while Claire tucked the kids into bed, I sat at my desk reviewing everything again. The trap was nearly finished. All it needed was patience. She believed she had humiliated me at my lowest moment, handing me divorce papers beside my father's casket. What she didn't understand was that grief sharpens focus. My silence wasn't surrender, it was the tightening of a spring. Next, I'll tell you how I turned that silence into leverage, setting the stage for the moment she realized every step she had taken was into a corner I had built for her. The morning after the funeral, Claire acted as though nothing had happened. She made coffee, packed school lunches, and hummed a tune while moving around the kitchen. The envelope she had handed me was never mentioned. She assumed my silence meant defeat. It didn't. It meant calculation. When the kids left for school, I sat at the table, unfolded the divorce papers, and studied every clause. Claire's lawyer had been aggressive. She wanted the house, primary custody, and a large portion of my retirement savings. It was a bold move, designed to crush me while grief still hung heavy over my shoulders. But I wasn't grieving anymore. I was sharpening. I picked up the phone and called my attorney. He already knew my voice would mean something serious. I told him it was time to activate everything we had prepared. He didn't ask questions. He just said, "Understood." That word was enough. From that point forward, I stopped reacting and started executing. Quiet execution is cleaner than confrontation. Claire went about her days thinking she held the upper hand. She didn't notice that I began withdrawing funds from accounts she couldn't touch. She didn't realize that I secured the children's college savings under my name alone. She had no idea that while she thought she was building a future with her lover, I was removing every piece of foundation from under her feet. At night, when she stayed out late and claimed she was with friends, I didn't question her. I kissed the kids goodnight, set the alarm, and worked in my office. I reviewed every piece of evidence, ensuring it was airtight. Judges don't care about suspicion, they care about proof. And I had proof layered in duplicates, each copy stored separately, some digital, some physical. Her lover's arrogance made it easier. He wasn't careful. He used his credit card for hotel rooms, left receipts in his car, and bragged online about dinners and trips. He thought I was blind. But blind men don't build traps. Blind men don't wait in silence while every move is logged. By the end of the week, I had a binder so thick it could stop a bullet. Inside it was Claire's new life, exposed page by page. Affairs, finances, manipulation of the kids. Enough to tilt any court against her. I closed the binder, set it on the shelf, and locked it away. Then I poured a drink, sat in the dark, and let the silence wrap around me like armor. Next, I'll tell you how I tightened the pressure, slow, deliberate moves that made Claire believe she was in control, while every step pulled her deeper into the corner I'd built. Claire mistook my calm for surrender. She carried herself differently, like a victor waiting for me to accept defeat. She stayed out later, brought her lover closer into our children's orbit, and started leaving documents around the house as if I would eventually sign whatever she placed in front of me. I signed nothing. Instead, I tightened the pressure. Quietly, I met with the forensic accountant in a dim office downtown. He laid out the numbers clearly. Claire had been siphoning money into a private account for almost a year. Not much at first, but enough to show intent. The transfers were small, spread across different dates, meant to avoid suspicion. She thought she was clever. She wasn't. I documented everything. Every transaction. Every pattern. I asked the accountant to prepare a formal report. When it was done, I placed it into the same binder that already held the photographs and receipts. The trap was growing teeth. At home, Claire played the doting mother. She smiled when the kids hugged her lover, encouraged them to sit on his lap, and corrected them when they accidentally called me Dad in front of him. My jaw tightened each time, but I didn't intervene. Judges don't trust anger. They trust consistency. And I was building a case where her own actions would speak louder than my words. I added another layer, technology. I installed a camera in my office, positioned to capture any hands rifling through my files. Within a week, it caught Claire late at night, flipping through drawers, searching. She didn't find the binder. It was never in the house when I wasn't. But the footage was another nail. Proof of intent. Proof of dishonesty. When I came down for breakfast the next morning, Claire smiled too brightly. She asked if I was holding up okay after the funeral. I nodded, poured coffee, and said nothing. Silence was my sharpest weapon, and she couldn't stand it. She thrived on reactions, needed them to justify her moves. The less I gave her, the more desperate she became. One night, her lover drove her home and walked her to the door. I watched from the upstairs window, lights off. as she kissed him openly on the porch where my children slept inside. She thought boldness meant victory. But boldness without caution is just evidence waiting to be filed. I logged the date, time, and footage. Another piece placed exactly where it belonged. Next, I'll tell you how I began shifting the balance of power, step by step, until Claire realized too late that every path she chose led exactly where I wanted her to go. The balance began to shift the moment I stopped reacting altogether. Claire expected resistance, arguments, maybe even begging. Instead, I gave her routine. Breakfast with the kids. Work on schedule. Evenings in my office. Nothing unpredictable. Nothing emotional. The stillness unnerved her more than anger ever could. Meanwhile, I kept tightening the net. My attorney filed preliminary motions, quiet, procedural, designed to stall her timeline. She wanted a fast divorce. I made sure nothing moved quickly. The longer it stretched, the more careless she became. Claire's lover started showing up at school pickups. Teachers raised eyebrows, but didn't intervene. I did. I contacted the principal, requested a formal note added to my children's records. Any non-parent interaction had to be approved in writing. Claire hadn't expected that. The next day, she stormed into the kitchen, papers in hand, demanding to know why the school had restricted pickups. I sipped my coffee and told her she should talk to the principal. My silence after that sentence cut deeper than any argument could. I logged her reaction. Raised voice, aggressive posture, children overhearing every word. Judges don't like instability around children. A week later, I received confirmation from the private investigator. Photos of Claire and her lover at a downtown hotel, timestamped to the exact nights she'd told me she was working late. The images were clear, undeniable. I didn't flinch. I placed them into the binder with everything else. At this point, the trap wasn't just evidence, it was inevitability. Claire thought she was building momentum toward freedom, but all she was doing was furnishing my case. Her parents invited us to dinner one weekend. I went, calm, polite, as if nothing were wrong. Claire's lover didn't join us, but the tension was visible. Midway through the meal, Claire's mother pulled me aside, whispered that I should let Claire go, that holding on would only make things harder. I nodded once, thanked her, and returned to the table. What she didn't realize was that every word from her mouth revealed where Claire had been planting seeds. She was already crafting her narrative, and I was already dismantling it. That night, back in my office, I slid the binder across the desk and opened it again. Each page, each photo, each document was a strike waiting to fall. Not yet. Timing mattered. Next, I'll tell you how I shifted from gathering to execution, and how Claire's own moves gave me the perfect stage to reveal everything without raising my voice. Execution began quietly, almost invisibly. I didn't storm into court with accusations or demand public scenes. Instead, I placed my attorney on a steady drip of information. Each week, he filed new motions, each backed with another piece of evidence. Custody evaluations, financial disclosures, character witnesses. The binder had become a weapon, and I was letting it strike one page at a time. Claire noticed the resistance, but not the source. She thought the system was slow, clogged with red tape. She didn't realize I was the one slowing it, making sure every move she made stacked against her. She grew frustrated. Her lover grew reckless. Both of them started pressing harder, trying to force me into confrontation. I gave them nothing. The children were my focus. I volunteered for every school event, every doctor's appointment, every late-night homework session. I didn't have to say a word about being the stable parent. I just had to live it. Meanwhile, Claire missed pickups, skipped school plays, and brought her lover into spaces where teachers and other parents couldn't ignore him. They saw. They remembered. And when the time came, they would testify. One night, Claire came home furious. She slammed her bag on the counter, accusing me of poisoning the kids against her. I didn't respond. I simply watched as she unraveled in front of them, her voice sharp, her words cruel. Emma cried. Jack hid behind his chair. I let the scene burn itself out, then quietly comforted the children while she stormed off. Later, I documented everything. Date, time, witnesses, emotional impact on the kids. Judges don't need theatrics. They need facts. My attorney called the next day. He said, Daniel, we're ready to move. We can file for temporary custody based on everything you've provided. I agreed, but asked him to wait one more week. Timing mattered, and Claire was spiraling. I wanted her to give me the final piece herself. I didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, she showed up at the school with her lover, insisting he had permission to take the kids home. The principal refused. She caused a scene, yelling, threatening, pulling Emma by the arm while Jack cried. The police were called. I arrived minutes later, calm, collected, with custody motions already drafted in my bag. That moment was the shift. The stage was hers, but the spotlight revealed everything I had been waiting for. Next, I'll tell you how I used that incident to pull the trigger on the trap I had built, and how the silence I carried turned into the loudest strike of all. The school incident was the moment I had been waiting for. Claire's mask slipped in public, in front of teachers, administrators, parents, even the police. She thought she was proving her devotion to the kids. What she showed instead was recklessness, instability, and disregard for rules. I didn't raise my voice at the scene. I didn't confront her. I calmly took Emma and Jack by the hand, led them to my car, and drove home in silence. Their tears dried by the time we reached the driveway. Claire, meanwhile, stayed behind arguing with officers. She didn't know that every word, every action, was already being documented for the custody file. That evening, I called my attorney. I told him the time had come. By morning, motions for temporary custody were filed. Attached were statements from the school principal, 2 teachers, and even a parent who witnessed everything. Combined with my binder of evidence, it painted a picture Claire couldn't escape. Her response came fast. She stormed into the house, papers in hand, shouting about betrayal, about me, turning the kids against her. I didn't engage. I sat at the table, opened the envelope, and quietly reviewed her lawyer's response. It was defensive, rushed, built on emotion instead of facts. She was playing checkers while I was finishing chess. Days later, we sat in a courtroom for the first hearing. Claire arrived with her lover, dressed sharp, forcing a smile. I arrived alone, binder in hand, calm. The judge listened as her lawyers spoke of my supposed coldness, my silence, my refusal to engage. Then my attorney opened the binder and laid out everything: financial records, GPS logs, photographs, witness statements, school reports. One by one, every page tightened the noose. When the footage from the school incident played, the courtroom went silent except for Claire's voice echoing through the speakers, sharp and angry. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Claire shifted uncomfortably. Her lover looked down. Temporary custody was granted to me that day. Claire was given visitation rights, supervised at first. Her lawyer objected, argued, pleaded. The judge remained unmoved. The evidence was too clear. As we left the courthouse, Claire tried to speak to me in the hallway. Her voice cracked, begging for compromise. I walked past her without a word. Silence, once again, said more than anything else could. Next, I'll tell you how I turned that victory into permanence, ensuring Claire not only lost her grip on the children, but also the financial foundation she thought she had secured. Winning temporary custody was only the first strike. I knew Claire would fight harder now, clawing for any angle to regain control. What she didn't realize was that while she scrambled, I was already dismantling her foundation piece by piece. Her finances were the first to crumble. The forensic accountant delivered his final report. Months of siphoned money, all documented. Transfers to her private account, cash withdrawals that lined up with hotel stays, and evidence of her lover benefiting from funds meant for our household. I gave the report to my attorney, who filed it immediately. Judges don't take kindly to deception in financial disclosures. Claire had perjured herself on her own paperwork. At home, the silence grew heavier. She tried to argue late into the night, accusing me of manipulation, betrayal, cruelty. I didn't respond. I let her words hang in the air, empty, powerless. Silence made her louder, more desperate. The children saw it, absorbed it, and leaned closer toward me with each passing day. They no longer called her lover Dad. They didn't call him anything. Distance was forming naturally, without me having to say a word. Her lover began to falter too. The pressure of court hearings, public whispers, and financial exposure wore him down. He stopped showing up at school. He stopped posting pictures online. Eventually, he stopped standing beside her in court. Claire was left alone, the image of betrayal with no partner to shield her. I struck quietly in other ways as well. Every asset she thought was untouchable, frozen. Every lie she thought would stand, exposed. When her lawyer filed motions claiming she was the more stable parent, My attorney slid across affidavits from teachers and neighbors describing late-night arguments, public scenes, and neglect. Each document was a hammer. Each fact shattered her image further. The judge extended my custody order. Claire's visitation remained supervised. Financial penalties mounted. The house she believed she would keep was no longer guaranteed. The retirement savings she thought she could claim slipped further from her grasp. She had tried to break me at my father's funeral. She thought grief made me weak. What she didn't understand was that grief made me sharper, colder, more deliberate. I didn't just survive her betrayal. I was turning it into her undoing. Next, I'll tell you how the final hearing unfolded, how the last pages of my binder closed around her, and how I walked out not just free, but untouchable. The final hearing arrived like the inevitable last move in a game already decided. Claire walked into the courtroom with her lawyer, but without her lover. His absence spoke louder than anything I could have said. She looked thinner, worn down, her confidence chipped away by weeks of silence, evidence, and losses she couldn't reverse. I carried the binder under my arm. I didn't need to open it anymore. Its contents were already woven into the court record. But its presence reminded her of what it held. Every time she glanced at it, her hands trembled slightly. Her lawyer tried to paint me as detached, too cold to be the primary parent. He spoke about stability, claiming Claire was nurturing, involved, committed. The judge listened without expression. Then my attorney stood, calm, deliberate, and laid out the facts one more time. The financial report, showing Claire's siphoned funds. The school incident, recorded and witnessed. The photographs, time-stamped, undeniable. The affidavits from teachers, neighbors, and even family members. Each piece stacked neatly on top of the last, forming a wall she couldn't climb. Claire's lawyer objected, argued, even accused me of orchestrating everything. The judge silenced him quickly. Judges don't care about noise. They care about order. When it was Claire's turn to speak, her voice cracked. She begged the court not to take her children, insisted she was only guilty of mistakes in judgment, not neglect. But the more she spoke, the clearer it became. Her words were emotional. Mine were factual, and facts always win. The ruling came down swiftly. Full custody granted to me. Claire was given visitation, limited and supervised until further review. Financial restitution ordered for the funds she diverted. The house awarded in my name. Retirement untouched. Claire collapsed into her chair, tears streaming down her face. Her lawyer placed a hand on her shoulder, whispering something she didn't hear. Across the room, I closed the binder one last time. I hadn't raised my voice once. I hadn't broken composure. Silence had carried me from the funeral to this very moment. When the judge adjourned, I rose, collected my binder, and walked out. Claire tried to call after me, her words a mixture of apology and anger, but I didn't turn around. She had chosen noise. I had chosen quiet, and quiet had won. Next, I'll tell you how life looked after the ruling. The aftermath, the rebuilding, and the lesson silence carved into every part of me. Life after the ruling felt different. The house, once filled with tension, was quiet in a way that wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean. Emma and Jack adjusted quickly. Their routines returned. Homework at the table, laughter in the living room. Nights where they finally slept without arguments echoing through the walls. They didn't ask about their mother's lover. They didn't need to. Children see more than adults admit. Claire's visits started under supervision. She tried to play the role of devoted parent, but the kids hesitated around her. They weren't cold, just distant. Distance built not by me, but by her own choices. When she grew frustrated, the supervisors noted it. Every report went into the file. The system she thought she controlled was now documenting her decline without me lifting a finger. I didn't celebrate the outcome. There was no victory dance, no gloating. Revenge hadn't been the goal. Stability had, and silence had been the path to it. The binder that once sat heavy on my desk was now sealed away in a safe. I didn't need it anymore, but its presence reminded me that preparation, patience, and quiet action can undo even the loudest betrayal. At work, colleagues asked how I was holding up. I gave them the same answer every time. We're good. And we were. My father's death had nearly broken me, but in a way, it gave me clarity. Grief had stripped away illusions. It showed me who I could trust and who I couldn't. Months later, I heard that Claire's lover had left her. The weight of the scandal, the financial penalties, the restrictions, it was too much. She was alone now, exactly where her choices had led her. I didn't smile when I heard it. I didn't feel pity either. I felt nothing at all. That was the point. On the anniversary of my father's passing, I took Emma and Jack to his grave. We stood there quietly, the three of us, flowers in hand. Jack whispered that he missed Grandpa. Emma leaned against me, silent. I told them their grandfather had believed in strength without noise, in building things that last. Then we left, carrying that truth with us. Some men fight loud, wasting themselves and shouting matches that lead nowhere. I fought in silence. I watched, I planned, I executed. And when the time came, I didn't have to raise my voice to win. The quiet man walked away whole, with his children beside him and his future intact. And that was louder than any noise betrayal could ever make. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.